Welcome everybody to the Personal Health Summit 2015. Thank you so much for investing the time into your health to be here listening to these amazing calls from 30 experts from all over the world, bring amazing information, cutting edge information to you from areas of nutrition, exercise, sleep, consciousness, mindfulness. What else we had? Science, medicine, World Health Solutions, biotechnology. So many great conversations. I'm super excited to be talking with Nita today about igniting your passion and actually finding out who you are, where you are right now, and how you can transition to a place of greatness. So without any further ado, we're going to jump into the conversation. Firstly, just a quick thank you to our major sponsors, Ultimate Human Foundation, for the amazing work they're doing on the planet, looking to eradicate and eliminate chronic pain and disease, and a PH360, who's our major sponsor, that's looking at applying the personalized health information and epigenetics into a way that you can really understand the best foods for you, exercises to do, the environments, the climates, the friends to hang out with, the way your mind works, all these amazing understandings so that you can actually find out where to start and transition towards health and happiness. So thank you to everybody, but the biggest thank you to you for being here, investing your time. And let's jump straight into this conversation. I'd love to introduce Dr. Neeta Bhushan with us today. Dr. Neeta is a motivational speaker, emotional confidence advocate, and social entrepreneur, helping millions step into their greatness through harnessing emotional health practices. Neeta helps men and women step into their greatness, own their unique gifts to recognize their limitless capabilities to flourish with passion and purpose in the world. So beautiful. Neeta, thank you so much for being here today. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Matt. It's incredible to be on the panel. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Love being here.
Thank you. Well, I'd love to jump straight into hearing a little bit about you, Neeta, if we can. And I'd love to hear always a bit about the speakers that we're having on this summit, so we can get to know you a little bit and really understand where your journey has been and how you've gained experiences through your life, so that we can all, listening in right now, can start to understand how we can start to learn a lot of these sorts of things from you and from the stories and the information you have to share.
Yeah, so I guess my entire journey began about 4 years ago when I was in this picture perfect marriage and I was living an absolute lie, and I left my marriage. I was in an abusive, mentally and physically abusive marriage. I was in a traditional Filipino Indian household growing up, and so I was a cosmetic dentist. And I had all of these traditional trappings of success. So I had, the $1 million home, the fancy travel, this picture perfect guy that I was married to from the outside. But on the inside, I was completely destroyed. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my identity was. And I felt like I was trapped. And because of growing up with cultural pressures and expectations of being this quote unquote tiger parents, where you have, the Filipino mom who was this pageant queen, and, there's this expectation that you had to be a certain way. So I was, my mom hoped that I would become a pageant queen as well. And on my dad's side, he was this strict Indian, from Indian upbringing. And so there was this constant pressure to be, education and success was huge. And so, I charted the path of basically living myself or my life for other people. And my mom and my dad and my youngest brother before I was 20, and I lost them all to medical diseases. And so it's been this journey of, trying to belong and trying to, live my life onto other people. And I didn't realize that I was living this, this idea of attaining material or, these traditional modes of external measures of success to only gain validation from, my no longer living parents, because I wanted to live on that legacy. And so it wasn't until I left that I started realizing that, your true passions come from really knowing who you are first. And I had to take a step back. I mean, I had $1 million practice that I was running, so everything looked fine from the outside, but I was completely crumbling on the inside. I was super insecure as a leader, and I started developing I started, diving into over $100,000 in personal development courses, just to kind of, and professional development, just to navigate, this idea of, knowing yourself truly and becoming self-actualized are keys to really becoming and revealing your best self. And so here we are today.
Beautiful story, Nita. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you touch on so many different points in your beautiful journey, which many listening in today will probably be either facing or may have been in those circumstances, or maybe even face those circumstances in the future. And I'd love it if you can just share with us a little bit about how you were able to be in the mind space that you were able to be in. It's a very tough situation, with losing a lot of family, especially at that young age. How were you able to be so strong? How did you cope? How did you start to move from a place, of a very tough situation, through to where you are today? And if you could just share with that a little bit about your experience, and also for those that are listening in today, how we can start to take some tangible steps ourselves if we are suffering from that at this point in time.
Yeah, thank you. So, because I've had so many resilient points of resilience in my life, and it's not what I've learned, and now what I teach other people, and in our workshops and our seminars, and basically when I am speaking on stage, it's really not about the stories that define you. You every single day have a choice. You have a choice to live within those stories and the confines and the boxes that people sometimes put us in, or we're born into, like family or society, or certain jobs that we think that we need to be part of for whatever reason. But it really starts with owning your story, not being defined by that. Every single day we make that choice. And when I was in the deepest throes of living in fear, basically living in fear of what society would think of me if I was this big cosmetic dentist, with this high profile practice and this picture perfect marriage from the outside, but I was, struggling on the inside. And it wasn't until I released and became completely vulnerable. And, from this overachieving Asian mentality where, pride is really big, I had to make peace with my ego. I had to learn how to forgive, and, really, and these are some of the things that now I talk about and I teach, but very tangibly, with all of the the readings and the healers that I've worked with, and the time that I spent idle and still, I developed a meditation practice, and now what I call it, it's creating your bliss and in your blissciplines, and really, if you're when you're having your perfect day and your ideal day, what are 3 or 4 simple things that you can do every single day that's for you, and really getting to know yourself? And I always say it could be as silly as singing in the shower, or running outside for maybe, even if it's 30 seconds or 5 minutes, but doing something that's completely for you to fill your cup up first. Because, I think that for a lot of us, and for a lot of, overachieving, very impact driven people, especially me being in Silicon Valley now, this idea of, constantly, achieving, but then we get burnt out in the process, and then we kind of lose our frame sometimes. And if we're not completely in tune with our emotions, and B, what's making us come alive every day, and how can we just savor our cups of chai, tea, coffee that you make every morning. Those are some of the little things that I think people can do to jumpstart their bliss practice, where they can instill greatness in their life every single day.
Beautiful, Nita. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love the concept of blissciplines. It's great. We've already got some comments coming through. And for those listening in live here, this is an interactive session. If you have comments for Nita, please either request to raise your hand and join the conversation, or pop your questions in the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer as many of those as we can throughout this session. So please go ahead and do that if you'd like to engage with Nita. And Nita, I'd just love to come back to a couple of things that you talked about there. And one of the things that was really important that you said was that you learned to be vulnerable. and that was, I guess the start of a transition into a new space. How do we even go about that? What does that even mean? How, like, for people listening right now, we've heard this from a couple of speakers, but what does it actually mean? Like, if we're sitting here right now, how do we be vulnerable? Where do we start on that, and what should we expect, and what sort of comes after that?
I love this question. It brings me to the time where I was actually I was kind of in this crossroads where there was so much turmoil going on in my professional life. I had all of these. I had my divorce going on. I had my private practice, which I had, 4 doctors, 15 total staff. And I was so afraid to tell them that I had been living out of my car and I was homeless for 3 months. And I had pretended that everything was okay. I would be crying before I would walk into the office. And mind you, I was the CEO, I was the leader. And, I had to compose myself because, this traditional Indian Filipino girl, we don't show our feelings. And, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm totally fine. I'm totally okay. And I called in a meeting, and I was nervous, out of, like, my heart was beating out of my chest. But I made a commitment to myself that I said, you know what, if I was going to make any sort of change in my life, I'm going to need to share this with people. And, even in doing so in my own family. And so I basically called a tiny little meeting in the middle of the day. We had patients, running around and everything. And I said to them, you have a choice. You can either leave right now, or, you can continue to work with me, but here's what I'm going through. And it's going to be very hard for me. But that was the first time I was ever truthful with my emotions and really being able to share and say, hey, I kind of need help. Because, in our, fast-paced society, we all have masks. And, some of my biggest mentors, like Brene Brown, she talks about this a lot. I mean, she's done a ton of studies on, vulnerability and why we have our masks that we have up every single day. And it's only until, we realize that, the same insecurities that we may face are exactly the same insecurities that you may face at some point in your life, or some other people may face. And, it's kind of this dancing act of when you realize that we're not so different, and our masks and our accolades and all of our achievements tend to put us in separate buckets, but really all we're longing for is connection. And that idea that, giving ourselves permission to be human, right? And have our feelings. And, and I think not very many people really acknowledge that and, put that to the side, but it definitely brings, it brings people closer in this idea that, we don't have to face certain struggles in our life by ourselves, which is why, this tour and kind of the work that I'm doing now with the live events are so powerful, and they're so transformative because of the fact that it allows people in a safe place to just be who they are without all of the constructs that, society or, our impact-driven lives kind of tell us that we should be. And so, yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Beautiful, Nita. Thank you for sharing that. And I love how, the principles that you share there for us to be able to just really come from our heart and, quieten the stories in our mind, because, the fear that we often have there are often stories in our mind, and we can tell ourselves whatever stories we like, whether it's going to be a scary conversation or an exciting conversation, or on the other side of that conversation, for us being vulnerable with our friends or family, may be the outcome that we're looking for. It may be the scariest thing in the world. The stories that you make up are just the stories that you choose to make up in your mind. And if you can always come from your heart, then that is, I guess, the definition of being vulnerable, is doing what you did. And I appreciate you sharing that with us, and I appreciate you sharing a story that's so very powerful, so that a lot of us at home can be comfortable knowing that we're going through the same tough situations, and everybody else out there is facing very similar tough situations, and actually is there to support us. We're all connected at many, many different levels, and often the fear that we have in our mind isn't a real fear. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. Nita, I'd love to jump into what happens after this. So this is being vulnerable is such an important first step. It means that we can literally come from our heart and be in a space where we're more connected and aligned with who we are, as opposed to the stories that may exist from some of our beliefs or thoughts or perceptions from society or ourselves or other people, whatever it may be. Once we get to there, who are we from our heart? Can you talk to us a little bit about passion, about purpose, and about if we're looking to find out really who we are and what we're here for? Where do we start that conversation, and how do we find out why we're all here and coming from the heart? What does that mean in a tangible way?
Yes, I love that. So we're, it's kind of moving into like you're owning your story and you're realizing where you are at the stage. And, it can be from, everyone has different walks of life, and whether you're in transition, whether you're a seasoned CEO, whether you're an aspiring leader, or you're a new mom, you're in this new phase of life. There's going to be several different avenues of how you can really tap into the core of why you're here and how you're here to serve. And it starts with getting to know you. So it starts with getting to know what makes you come alive. And I say this quite a bit, but it's very simple, and it's an exercise that I have tons of people do. It's actually one of the main exercises that we open up with. But if you had nothing to worry about, and if you had all the time, money in the world, what exactly would you be doing and why? Okay. And it starts out with, what are your core unique abilities? And, I think that for some people, they may have never thought about that before, or they're like, well, I'm good at doing this, so, maybe I'll stick in this field, or maybe because, my training is this, and I spent, 8 years, doing this, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna focus on, being able to lead because that's what I do. But, how does it make you feel, number one? And number two, how can you use your unique abilities to serve in a greater way where, yes, you're giving back? And, and I think that a lot of times, because we're not defined by, our past stories, we get to decide what parts of our past get to come along. And with many of my mentors that I've worked with over the past, and now that I've been able to share with, a lot of different types of folks, whether it's women and men and different CEOs and healthcare professionals. But, I think because, we have this idea that's constantly running through our heads about who we should be, it's very easy when we basically, we stop ourselves and we just think, okay, what do I want to be doing more of today? How do I get started with that? Am I doing more of that today? So whether you want to be, speaking more, you want to be writing more. Okay, how am I going to get there? And what parts of my past? So is it strategy? Is it skill set? Is it my passion? Is it, my empathy for, or my compassion for listening to others? What parts of my skill set get to come along? And that's a very, basic, tangible way to break that up.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Nita. And it's such an important conversation, is where do we start? And a lot of us, do get caught up in the rat race and do live the 9 to 5, can't wait for the weekend lifestyle. And understanding what we're truly passionate about is so important, because it means that, you don't ever have to work a day in your life. You can get up and literally just do things you love all day, every day, and just do that. And it's such a freeing place to be in. And to revisit this, or just to visit this even a little bit more in detail, the concept of igniting our passion and stepping into our greatness. It's kind of a lot of what we're all searching for or hoping to be doing in our lives. And how cool would it be if we could just do everything we love all the time and get paid for it, and have to not worry about money and worry about all these sorts of things. Can you just talk us through a little bit more? I know that you're running courses and you're doing live events all around the country on this at the moment. Can you just talk us through a little bit more about this? Because there's a lot of people listening in right now, and we've got some great questions starting to come through that really want to understand, where can I start? So would you mind just sharing a little bit more in depth about this whole process and how we can all step into our greatness?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways where you can get tapped in. So I'm doing this North American 4-city tour, and it is called Step Into Greatness. You can check it out right now. We are basically halfway through the tour. So we started out in Chicago, which is my hometown, born and raised there. And then we went off to Toronto, and now we're ending the last two along the coast. So if you are in the New York City area, we have our live event is going to be on November the 6th. It's in Manhattan. And also November the 12th, and that's in San Francisco. And really what it is, it's a unique experience where it's a full day live Epic Leaders Immersion, where you get the permission to focus on you. And you have those 7 hours, and you're going to be around like-minded individuals who are kind of also in that same space. Perhaps they are in transition. Perhaps they are, you know, an aspiring entrepreneur. Maybe they have been living under this mask of, you know, and they don't really know how to have difficult conversations, how to create boundaries, how to break free from expectations. You know, these are all huge topics. And what we uncovered during the day is, you know, how to let go of our fears. How do we own our stories? Basically a little glimpse of, you know, what I've been sharing today, and how to create your emotional toolkit. And your emotional toolkit is huge because it's really how you manage your emotions when it matters the most. And, you know, we're not taught a lot of these skill sets in school. And, you know, for even all of the experts on your panel, you know, we come from this science background, and, you know, when we're merging, you know, mind, body, and science, really it comes from understanding where our emotions come from and then how to navigate that. So you made up a beautiful point to, and this is basically how we start our live day immersions, is really, you know, giving ourselves the time to focus on ourselves. And coming from that Asian background, you know, we have, you know, tremendous amount of people who, you know, they think it's, or we were taught that it was selfish to actually put ourselves first. And it was selfish, you know, to not put your cousins or brothers and sisters and your family first. And happiness meant to focus on other people. And happiness would mean, you know, well, this is my obligation. My duty is to take care of my family. So what is it that I have to do in order to do that? Or we're basically checking off all of these boxes. You know, what else can I get done before I'm 30? Or, you know, how much impact am I going to have before 35? And, you know, it's intense pressure. So this is a full day to really focus on who you were meant to be without all of that. And if you are doing all of that, well, let's reset your boundaries. You know, is it really what you want to be doing? And if not, how can you add more so that you can have less stress in your life, more balance, and just allowing yourself to do some of the things that, you know, we don't get to do, and really uncovering some of your pain points. Because I think for a lot of these, you know, one-day types of retreat style events, we don't get to practice our vulnerability, and we give you key takeaway exercises that not only optimize your health, because we have other experts that are also there for the day who are talking about, you know, just health hacks and on the go, really busy people that want to be able to build their next, you know, whatever, but really have the foundation and the accountability in a safe space where they can just be and be accepted. And so that, again, if you want more information, it's stepintogreatness.co. And it is application-based. So we are taking applications up until about November the 3rd for New York. And I'm also partnering up with Anthony Trucks. He's former NFL star, and he's also a speaker and author on the event in San Francisco. So I'd really, really love to see you guys there. And also, I am creator of the Emotional Grit. So you have, everyone can take advantage of the Emotional Grit assessment. It's emotionalgrit.com, and it's a beautiful way to analyze how you're managing your emotions during, you know, the day-to-day processes, because we don't learn those skill sets in school, and sometimes it's kind of, you know, what matters the most, right?
Beautiful, Neeta. Thank you for sharing that with us. And for those that need those links, they're all in the chat box there, stepintogreatness.co and emotionalgrit.com. And Nita's website is also netabhushan.com. So please go and check that out and check out the amazing work that Nita's up to. Nita, if you had to jam pack, full day event you've spoken about into about 5 minutes for everybody listening to the call right now, what sort of information for us can you give to be able to step into our greatness? So where do we start? What do we do? Where do we go? And what do we need to consider? If you had to sort of give us all that in 5 minutes. I know it's a very tough thing to ask you that, but would you be able to just walk us through that so that we can get a really good, tangible understanding of this, right here, right now on the call?
Absolutely. So in order to step into your greatness, first you need to really appreciate where you are. There's no better time than now. I mean, you're exactly where you need to be at this moment. And then moving forward, surround yourself with a like-minded community that's going to help you get there. And then basically invest the time in yourself. Whether it's taking up meditation practices, moving practices, experts that will help you jumpstart your health. These are all things that we can do to fill our cups up first, because when we're radiating at our highest level, it's only when we're revealing our best self and we can then elevate the world around us. And I always say, start out with just keeping a journal. I started out with a gratitude journal, and I started out with being grateful for my 3 big wins every single day, because it's not about, the sprint, it's about the marathon. And it's a nice reminder for me as well. But that's basically what, in a nutshell, what we give you, the tangible tools that you can do from gaining from a live event or even some of our online programming. But it basically starts with you.
Beautiful, Nita. Thank you. It's such a powerful message, and it is, the entire message of this whole summit. We're here talking about personalized health. It's all about you. You're completely unique. You're completely different from everybody else in the entire world. You're here all for you. This is your journey. This is your life. This is your reality. It's all about you. And helping understand that is a really empowering place to be. And the fact that we have all these choices to make and all these decisions that can actually influence our own lives in our health and our happiness is just such a great space to be aware of and to be stepping into. So I really appreciate your insight here today, Nathan, and thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the amazing work you're doing, helping others all over the world to understand how to step into their own greatness too. So I'd love just to visit a little bit. We're going to take some questions very soon, but I'd love just to visit a little bit. You've mentioned a number of different times about your background and how this is something growing up. You may have had these beliefs that were instilled on you, or these things that weren't good to do or were good to do. How does our growing up, how does our background influence our life, and how can we start to transition either with that or away from that, or how does that influence a lot of us and sort of who we are and where we're at, and how we can step into our own greatness?
Wow, that is a powerful question. It's interesting. I was facilitating a retreat this past weekend, and it was for these global leaders. It was for the Hive Women's Institute, and I've been helping them cultivate this Women's Institute for these global change makers who are doing just incredible things in the world from a social impact standpoint. And what I realized there, and it's no different from the college women or, the seasoned CEOs or the top level executives, but anyone who's actually reached, a certain level or is just, starving for this, overachievement, or has been defined traditionally by these, overachieving ideals, it does stem from a lot of times, the backgrounds. And it's fascinating because we don't really link the two, because we don't think that we don't even think that actually comes in our visceral being or in our core until we actually look back and start to peel the layers. And so, for a lot of us, I think that when we just start to ask the questions, why why do you need to, create this venture? Why this business? Or why medical school? And for instance, why dental school? you know, and when I was going into it, obviously having lost both of my parents, you know, both to cancer, actually, it was clear to me that growing up, because that's all I heard of, you know, you're as a traditional Filipino Indian girl, all you know is, you know, you're expected to be doctor, dentist, lawyer, engineer, right? And so in society, and I think that when, you know, a lot of, especially us humans, you know, we come up and we're brought up with community, and so there are certain expectations and ideals, and, you know, we can live on to those expectations and ideals because we want to belong. And I think that's number one. And you know, when you uncover all of that, whether it's Asian or, you know, Australian, it doesn't matter. I mean, when you really understand that, a lot of times our upbringing, obviously, we kind of just want to be accepted. We want to be loved. We want validation from our families. And, you know, even for me, it took me a really long time to understand, you know, in my early upbringing, because my mom got sick when I was 10. And so throughout my early teens, I was constantly trying to prove my worth to her, because, you know, she wanted me to be this pageant queen. My great-grandmother, my grandmother, all of my aunts were pageant queens. And my dad didn't want me to be that, because he wanted me to be this, you know, this education-driven female, because that's what Indians are supposed to be. And so coming from this bi-ethnic, bicultural background, you know, and I think a lot of people can attest to this, it's this idea of wanting to be loved. And even after my parents passed away, you know, I was still, you know, it was almost like I was living, you know, within their ghosts and their legacy, because I didn't really fully accept that a lot of the things that I was doing was really to just, you know, gain their approval, or what would they think, you know, and how would they feel this way. And so, yeah, and I think it's fascinating that, you know, for many of us, we don't realize this until there's some sort of a breaking point in our life, whether it's loss, you know, in my case, it was divorce, where we start to just, or it's burnout, you know, or we get sick, we get, you know, physically sick, and we have to actually make this change where we're like, okay, is this really the life that we're supposed to be living, or is there something greater? And a lot of times, you know, it's fear that's holding us back. It's our old patterns that are holding us back, and it's obviously, of course, you know, those you know, those inner stories, but you know, it's definitely one of those things where once we spend the time to really understand, well, for what? And it's a very simple question, and for why are you doing this? And, you know, for what reasons? And for whom? And that's another question. And, you know, for the most, you know, intellectual, fascinating humans that come to our live events, you know, when you pose that question and just very simply, and you have a ton of reflection and the feedback that comes back with it, you're kind of like, actually, I've never thought about that through that lens and that perspective, or that framework.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Bigger feelings. Really helping out. I'd love to ask you some questions. I just want to I'm sorry if there's a bit of feedback on this line at the moment. I think it's kind of sorting itself out.
Okay.
One of the big things I'd love to
everyone. Thanks for the feedback.
Great feedback. I'd love to just visit again a little bit about you know, where we actually you know, come from, this space that you talk about there with our upbringing again. I just want to kind of delve into that a little bit further, because it is such a powerful understanding, you know, the cultural you know, cultural conditioning or cultural aspects that exist that people have, like you described, you know, whether in Australia, there's this thing called tall poppy syndrome, which is more to do with the way that, can you hear me okay, Nita?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There's tall poppy syndrome, which some may be familiar with, but it's something where you don't want to stand out from the rest. If you're a tall poppy that grows, you get cut down pretty quickly, and it's the sort of sarcastic Australian way that if somebody stands up in front of everybody and says, hey, I'm doing great things, I'm really, really awesome, you know, everyone else will say, sit down, who cares, we're not fussed about that. And so it's this cultural layer in Australia that you don't go out and talk to anyone about what you're up to or what you're doing, in any way, because it's otherwise you might stand out from the pack. As you're suggesting, in Asia, there's a lot of pressure about being whether you're being doctors or lawyers or anything that you're expected. There's a lot of pressure in so many different cultures in so many different ways, and it really is a powerful understanding that we can have, that's just the cultural beliefs. It's just other people's beliefs. It's your parents and your grandparents, and I guess that forms a community and forms what we call society. There's those beliefs that are there that actually stick with us a long way, and all we're ever trying to do is feel loved. And you brought that point up so well, and often we'll have these circumstances in our life that we don't know why they're there at the time. And there's a lot of people that have health challenges or other things like divorces or events that are pretty significant. And maybe a lot of people have these recurrently, and you may be listening right now thinking, I'm just finding it really tough to get through this. I'm always having things, my luck seems terrible. But often when you get through that to the other side, you look back and reflect on that, as you just shared before, and you see that as the event or the catalyst that can change your current mindset and can change the way you think. It's a way that you can say, hang on, why am I here? What am I here for? What's my purpose and what's my passion, and where does this help me, in terms of navigation for forward and for future? And it's often these events that we're finding tough right now that, if you're listening, if you're having a tough time at work or tough time in relationships, if you're suffering from health issues or chronic disease states, if you're listening to this right now, it's often these things that can be the catalyst for change for us, and to really question, where we're at and what's important for us and who we really are at our core, so that we can really start to transition into a new space and realize the opportunity that's out there, and realizes it's the choices that we make that can actually change our circumstances. And so I just wanted to highlight that a little bit more, Neeta, because it's such a powerful understanding that you just shared with us there. And I really want everybody to take note of that, from no matter what circumstances you're in right now. Everybody's gone through tough times, and there's reasons for those. At the time, it's very hard to see, but as you progress in the future, when you look back, a lot of us are so very grateful for those experiences that we have had, that at the time seemed very tough and very difficult, and really caused us to then be vulnerable, to open our hearts, to find out what our passion and purpose is, and to step into our greatness, so we can really be on our journey of why we're really here in the world. So I just want to sort of make sure everybody really understood what you just shared with us, Neeta, because it's very, very powerful. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I'd love to jump into a couple of questions here. We've got some amazing questions coming through that are really great. We've got a question here from Akila, who says, Neeta, I've been so grateful for people in my life who have removed their masks like you, and have encouraged me to remove mine for some time. My mask feels like it is made of stone from years of protecting me. How do I soften my mask so that I can soon remove it once and for all? It's a really great question, Akila, and Neeta, please share with us about your thoughts and insights there.
Yes. Thank you, Akila, for the question. And Matt, it's really what you were just highlighting. In order to soften our mask, it's really understanding that every single day we have a choice. We have a choice. We can choose to be doing or feeling or believing, these other stories that are around us, that sometimes consume us, that sometimes paralyze our ability to be vulnerable. But it doesn't have to be, a complete 180 right away. Like I shared earlier, it was just, it was that one step of me, telling the world that I had been living a lie. I was not this picture perfect human that I wanted to be for other people. And I think that when you recognize that, that certain challenge, you're at a crossroads in your life and you don't want to be living however everyone has been telling you to live, you really can start to make that choice. It starts by really owning and completely accepting what you love about yourself and what makes you unique. And so I started out with these mantras. And, because I obviously went into this mode of, am I worthy? Am I enough? Am I good enough? Am I lovable? I started creating this mantra and I wrote it down everywhere. And it was very simple. And you'll notice that a lot of the leaders and experts in their fields, they have this, I guess you can say, like a morning ritual or morning practice. And for me, it was every single day, different times of the day. But I started out with saying, I am brave, I am bold, and I am meant for amazing things. And it sounds so silly, but being able to just say that in the mirror as your reminder that you are not defined by other people or your mom or your coworkers or whatever, that your voice really matters, and it does not matter what everything else on the sidelines or that external noise, you know, it's not going to infiltrate what you're actually, what your beliefs are. So Akil, I would definitely have you start out with that and, you know, see where that takes you. But if you're not spending time already, try to take 5 minutes out of your day and just focusing on what makes you come alive, whatever that is. Maybe select 3 things out of that.
Beautiful, Nita. Thank you for addressing that question so beautifully. And we're gonna just jump to a few more questions here, and I really appreciate the questions coming through. If you have any more for Nita, please pop them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to get to all these here. There's a question here from Olga, Nita, that says, Nita, how did you come to be so brave to be yourself? I want to do that, but I'm really afraid of what my family, friends, and coworkers would say to me or about me. And again, just to, you know, echoing a lot of probably people in these circumstances, it's a big thing, Nita, for you to be addressing, you know, all your workers and saying, hey, come in for a meeting, guys. Here's where it's at. For, you know, stepping away from a marriage. These are big things. They're not easy things that people can just go and suddenly change. How do you help us navigate through that? Like, how do we, you know, did you sort of give yourself a 10-minute prep talk and then go and do it? Did you sort of plan it out and write it out? Did you know, how do we sort of start, you know, these, how do we get the confidence, or how do we actually get to that first step of engaging this and being vulnerable?
Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful question. You know, I remember taking myself back into that space, and obviously I talk about this a lot, but, you know, one of the most challenging points of your life can definitely be, and is often the, you know, one of the most pivotal points of your life for challenge. And, you know, I say this quite a bit. You know, I don't regret anything that's happened. I think obviously it's all happened so that I can be here today to share my journey with all of you. And, you know, that every single point we are going to have, you know, we all have things that kind of hold us back. We all have, you know, instances in our life that we're going to be tested. And if we don't learn from that first test, you know, it's going to come up again. It's going to come up again until we actually start to own that and make a concrete decision to protect ourselves, or maybe even recognize, okay, why does that keep coming up? So, you know, for instance, you know, why was I attracting the same pattern of guys? You know, why was I attracting that for so long? And really asking, well, you know, why are you afraid to be yourself? You know, what is that underlying fear? You know, is it because you're afraid of what, you know, the judgments of your coworkers? Are you afraid of not being accepted by your family? You know, and start to create a list of questions. And I love this because we don't ask ourselves those questions, you know, and we don't really spend the time to even understand where that's coming from. And quite honestly, for me, no, you know, obviously I was living in fear. And so my life, to be quite honest, was threatened. And I didn't even want to tell, you know, my younger brother, who had an idea that I was going through this really terrible time. And, you know, it was New Year's Eve, and I decided that, you know, that was the last time I was going to let him hit me. And so I actually, I left in the middle of the night, and I said to my, and I actually had 2 friends at the time who helped me. So, you know, I did not have the strength to leave on my own. I became vulnerable, and I shared everything first with my brother. And for those of you who understand, coming from a really cultural background, that was so hard for me. I was crying, and it was just it was a very big deal. But once my entire family knew, and they were so beyond supportive. Sometimes we have so many of these little, ideas in our head that we're not going to be accepted if we share the truth. But almost always, 95% of the time, you'd be surprised when you actually let your guard down. And even, I've done this in several different arenas, whether you're talking to, you know, a big group of, you know, really amazing folks, or just even, you know, just ordinary people. But at the same time, when you're just being just super open with complete integrity, you definitely realize that it was all in your head, and there's so much more support there for you. But I would definitely start with, if your current environment, you know, we're what, the sum 5 total of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So if they're the 5 people that you're spending your most time with right now is not supporting you, is not accepting of where you are, is not challenging your growth as a human, then it's time to really look outside of that. And for me, when I started feeling that way, the 3 months prior, before I actually made the decision to leave, and by the way, I was journaling a lot, you know, I started doing things that really, you know, made me happy. It was, you know, I started taking improv lessons, you know, and I began to create my own community and gain my confidence outside of that. So you can pick maybe some activities that will help you create a new community that's really supportive. And I would say that that's probably, that would be the biggest thing that you could do for yourselves as a start.
Beautiful, Nita. Thank you so much for all this amazing, tangible information, the perspective that you share, and the way that you've approached your own life and are able to share this with others is really just beautiful. So thank you so much again for being here, sharing this with us, and for all the great work that you're doing around the world. Nita, I'd love just to bring this back to health. We're here for a personal health summit.
Okay.
How does stepping into our greatness, or us being in flow, or living our passion and our purpose, how does this relate to health, and how does health support that, and how does that support our health? How does this all sort of fit into that conversation? And can you share a little bit with us about, you know, the components of health, or how this actually works in with all these great things, with the way that we can share from our heart and sort of keep our mind nice and clear?
Absolutely. You know, obviously it starts out with, you have to be able, we've got this vessel, we have this vessel, and we every single day get to treat it with, you know, the highest amount of nutrients that make us thrive. So not only are our emotions important, but really how we're treating our bodies are super important. And, you know, for those of us who don't really know how to manage our emotions, you know, it manifests in certain behaviors. And, you know, whether it's you're restricting yourself from eating, whether it's you're overeating because, you know, or you're emotionally eating because you're nervous or stressed or anxious, you know, all of these kind of coincide together. Whether it's you're abusing your body, you know, through other habits like addictions, drug addictions, you know, sex, all of these things. But when we're not understanding where our emotions are coming from, obviously it manifests in our health, where, you know, you don't want to, you know, work out, or you don't want to, you know, you've got all these cravings. And obviously, for me, it was on this journey and being able to obviously work with and be around tons of health and nutritional experts, you know, and even in our live events and in our workshops, you know, I tend to bring in, you know, experts who can share their stories of optimal health, of optimal living, you know, things like pH 360, because it's definitely important when you're intertwining the two, and in order to harness your personalized health. And specifically for me, because having lost 3 of my immediate family members to medical diseases before I was 19, you know, seeing my mother and my father literally, you know, pass and go through, I mean, the trauma of chemo and radiation, because they didn't know any better. They only knew what they knew, you know, as immigrants, you know, coming to the US to take care of us. So even though, you know, they were quote unquote on the external side healthy looking, you know, my dad still had smoking habits. You know, my mom was not eating when she was stressed out. And, you know, even in their own relationship dynamic, you know, it was a lot of things were for show, right? And for those of you who are coming from those backgrounds, you can definitely relate. But it really starts out with, what types of things we're putting in our bodies. So, which is why I love the cross section between that. And when we can start harnessing, number one, our emotions, but number two, being able to start that morning, whether it's your cup of tea or your warm lemon water, to start cleansing the inside. It starts with, okay, how are we going to optimize our health so that we're functioning, we've got the highest amount of energy, and then our output to the people that we serve are definitely at 100% and not at, a 50% level where you're going to crash in the middle of the day. And I think, Matt, what your mission is in your work in making people understand that is so vital, because yes, it starts with knowing, simply our foods, our superfoods, how we can really tap into our energy so that we are putting our best work out in the world and we're elevating ourselves as a result.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that great perspective, actually, on how our health is so important for our life purpose, if you like. It's we're all here in these physical bodies, and we need to make sure that they're very nourished and very supported in many different ways. And we're now understanding a lot more that's not just even the foods, but it's, as you share, the people we hang out with, our community, that can really support us in times. It's the way our mind works and the stories that may be there, whether it's fear or whether it's other things that create a lot of emotions that need to be able to shift for us to be in a really healthy space. It's it's the way we move and the way we get up and start the morning. And I love how you shared at the very start of the call, even if you get out and go for get outside and go for a jog or go for a walk for 30 seconds, it's something that's one of your 3 things that you've got on your list for the day. It really is a powerful time. And I guess the whole idea of this summit for everybody listening in has been for you to be able to understand what's right for you to be happy and healthy, and that everybody's very, very different. There's different foods and there's different teas that help people, and there's different exercises that are great for everybody. So understanding more about who you are from a health perspective, as well as who you are from a personal perspective, the combination, the integration of that is just such a powerful place. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Nita, and I really encourage everybody to check out PH360 if you haven't already. I know, Nita, you've had experience using PH360, and if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit, maybe for a minute, about your experience and how your health has been able to support what you're doing and where you're at in your life right now.
Absolutely. That was actually one of the key factors for me that really has changed my life tenfold. And it started out with, so even in my own, evolving and really learning about the different kinds of superfoods and different things that would get me in a healthy place where I can hack my own personal health. But I was trying all of these different things, and secretly I was really battling emotional eating, and I was also battling this my stomach and my gut issues. And it was happening for a really long time. And even though I was vegan, I was I doing everything that everyone says and all of these health experts say. And so I was juicing for a very long time. I was vegan, and then I was doing paleo diet because and I'm a small frame, and so I was still experiencing, just things where it was really paralyzing my ability to just function on a daily basis. And so obviously I came across PH360, and it's fascinating. And I don't know, for those of you who haven't checked it out, ph360.me, but it's great because our environment does a lot. And what I really loved about this that's so different and so unique from some of the other things out there regarding personalized health is the fact that your environment plays a role. And I know for myself, because I was constantly traveling and moving, and I've been in the space of not being in in an area for more than a couple of weeks to a month or so at a time. And these, what I learned from PH360 was, this cross section of your environment and your genetics and, your, Western medicine and Eastern medicine. And yes, you can have all of these superfoods, but maybe they might not be for you. So, I remember I was taking like 30 different supplements, and then you realize, wait a minute, okay, because you're in this area, you don't need to, take all of this. And maybe it's just starting out with, some of these other things that are good for you because of the season or because of where you're living at the moment. And I thought that was really key. And all of so I had, IBS or leaky gut syndrome, basically. And it healed. My gut, I was so bloated. I was, even for myself, I struggled with body image issues for a little bit because I gained, a little bit of weight. And so it was fascinating to go through that process to really understand what other people go through, and B, really how to use a tool that's very simple that provides you with so much data that we can start to harness in our own lives, even for somebody that's super busy, even for somebody who really doesn't understand all of the basic building blocks. PH360, they make it so easy for everyone to kind of, take ownership and advantage of it. I have my, my aunt and uncle who actually helped raise me, I have them on it as well. And for my aunt who struggled with rheumatoid arthritis for her entire life, she figured out that, she was eating some of the wrong things, and she's Indian. And now, obviously she updates, her measurements, and she's actually, I didn't say this, Matt, she's in India now, and now she's influencing our super traditional Indian family members on PH360, and I'm just like blown away. So for those of you who haven't tapped into that yet, definitely check it out. It's definitely revolutionary, and it's so easy to use.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Nita. And it's really great to understand that for those that aren't aware, please check it out, onlinehealthsummit.com/PH360. All it is information. It's your body talking to you. That's what PH360 is. It's just your body talking to you, providing personal information as to the things that are really good for you. So it's the most amazing starting point. It changes as you change all the time, and we really encourage everyone to check it out. And so many different people, thousands of people around the world, really changing their health and revolutionizing everything. But understanding where to start is the most important thing. And as Nita shares, it incorporates all Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine principles as well as Western. It really is a powerful platform. So we say a huge thank you to PH360 for sponsoring this summit series. And please go and check that out, onlinehealthsummit.com/PH360. So Nita, we've got probably the final question here, which really moves towards summarizing what I'd love to cover at the end of this call. It's from Yulia, who says, Nita, how do you think we can begin to create a society that values and rewards vulnerability and authentic expression? I want my children to grow up in a world where they are free to be themselves. I think that would solve all our societal woes. Thoughts and comments there for Yulia, and that's a beautiful question. Thank you, Yulia.
Yulia, that is an amazing question. For the next humans that we're raising, to be the leaders of our planet, it all starts with, what this entire summit is all about. And just by being completely unapologetically embracing all of our unique abilities to serve in the world. And I think that, it starts with embracing, some of their insecurities and really appreciating all of their unique abilities that make them themselves. And it's fascinating. We're trying to a lot of times make people, better. But, for some of these tiny humans, it's okay to appreciate where they are at that point and maybe start nurturing, some of the highlights that make them incredibly unique. And what I think that, in this whole paradigm of what we're trying to do is change the way we view, education in a way where it's not just about, going to school to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, kind of like in the Asian mentality of, playing on what people should be because they get certain grades, or certain things that they're good at because they score a certain way at. But what about if we looked at it where it's, okay, what characteristics are they embodying as a human, and how can they use those characteristics to really start serving, without any sort of external noise in the world, and how can they do that with complete 100% integrity? So that would be my last 2 cents on that. Thank you so much. It was really amazing to be on this panel. So appreciate being here.
Thank you so much, Nita. And just so many comments coming through that everybody's appreciated this so much. Thank you, Nita. You're incredible and so inspiring. So inspiring, says Summer. Yula says, Nita, you're so gorgeous inside and out. Thank you, Nita. I love that much, Nita. There's so many different comments coming through. So we really, and Denise says, really grateful for your contribution, Nita. Looking forward to stepping into greatness, which really sums up everything that we've talked about today. So, Nita, thank you so much for your time and for everything that you're doing in the world. Thank you for being here, for sharing all that your greatness and your wisdom with all of us. Thank you for being so vulnerable and for sharing your story so that we can all feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more brave ourselves to be able to step into our greatness, and for igniting our passion, our purpose, the reason why we're here in the world, and to realize that that's all interrelated between us as human beings, with our health, with our happiness, and everything that we're here to do. So thank you so much again, Nita. Really appreciate it. Please go and check out Nita's links that are there on the sites. We've got stepintoemotionalgrit.com and stepintogreatness.co and netabhushan.com. So please go check out those links, find out more about what Nita's up to. And thank you all for being here, investing the time into your own health and happiness so that we can help you transition on your journey and you can help others on theirs. Much appreciated experts who've had on this summit, and please share that with your family and friends so that everybody can benefit from this. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Nita. Look forward to talking to you all again soon.
All right. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to take a picture for us too. We're going to post it.
Okay.
You are amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. And I look forward to chatting with you on the other side. Hopefully, see you at a live event.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, Matt. Thanks, guys.